I always thought the palace would feel magical on the night of the grand choosing ball, the event people spent their whole lives preparing for. The night 1,000 Omegas arrived in shimmering gowns and embroidered cloaks, each hoping to be selected for a place in the twin Alpha King's inner circle. But for me, it was just another shift. I was sweeping ash from the massive front hearth when the first carriages rolled in, wheels crunching over gravel, like teeth grinding in the dark. My supervisor barked orders at us maids to keep our heads down and stay invisible. "Tonight is for the noble-born," she kept saying, "not for staff," as if I needed the reminder. Still, even with my eyes lowered, I couldn't ignore the sheer noise of it all. Laughter that sounded practiced, jewels clinking, heavy fabric swishing as if every Omega wanted the world to know they had money, connections, a family name worth bragging about. I'd grown up watching this ball from a distance. It was strange seeing it from the inside, as someone meant to blend into the walls instead of dream about the lights. I tried to focus on my bucket and broom, on staying out of the way, but the excitement in the air was impossible to ignore. The whole palace buzzed with it. Even the chandeliers seemed brighter, like they'd been saving their best glow for tonight. When my supervisor shoved a tray of goblets into my hands, I nearly dropped the whole thing. "Serve the entrance hall," she snapped. "And don't you dare speak to anyone." "Of course," I muttered, though my throat was tight. I'd avoided the entrance hall all day on purpose, and that was where the kings would make their appearance. And the idea of being anywhere near them made something in my chest tighten. Not fear, not awe, something stranger, something older. I pushed the thought away and stepped into the hall with the tray held high. Omegas swept past me in silks and velvet, all of them too busy preening for the kings to notice a maid with patched sleeves and tired eyes. But underneath the music and the chatter, I kept hearing one question echo through the crowd. "Do you think the twin alphas will choose someone tonight?" They never do. But there are 1,000 candidates this year. They're impossible to impress. Everyone seemed to have an opinion, but the truth was simpler. The kings didn't attend these balls to choose partners or favorites. They attended to remind the kingdom how powerful they were. Two alpha rulers, identical in face but different in every other way, standing side by side like mirrored storms. And when the trumpets finally sounded, announcing their arrival, the entire hall froze. Every Omega stood straighter. Every noble lowered their voice. Even I forgot to breathe. The doors opened. The twin alpha kings entered. I didn't mean to look. I really didn't. But something pulled my eyes up for a split second, and that was all it took, because both kings stopped mid-stride. Their gazes locked on me, not on the nobles, not on the shimmering gowns, not on the 1,000 Omegas who'd prepared their entire lives for this moment. Me, a palace maid holding a tray of cheap goblets with trembling hands. For one terrifying heartbeat, I froze, and in that heartbeat, I saw it. Recognition. Both kings knew me, after all these years. My supervisor hissed at me to move, but I couldn't. My knees felt like water, my throat like sand. And as the crowd whispered around us, one awful realization hit me. The kings weren't looking for an Omega tonight. They were looking for me. If I could have disappeared into the floor, I would have. The whole hall seemed to tilt toward me after the kings paused, like every Omega was leaning in to see what had caught their attention. My supervisor's eyes were burning holes through the back of my head, silently promising I'd be scrubbing gutters for the next month if I didn't move. So I forced my legs to work again. I lowered my head, stepped aside, and reminded myself I was nothing. A maid. A shadow. Someone no one important should ever notice. I kept repeating that in my mind until my hands stopped shaking. But I shouldn't have looked up, even once. Because the moment I did, everything went sideways. I was passing a group of Omegas near the staircase when one of them, a tall girl in a dress that probably cost more than my yearly wages, stuck out her foot. Not enough for anyone else to notice, just enough for me to catch the edge of it. I stumbled, the tray tilted, and in the space of a heartbeat, 12 goblets of sparkling juice flew into the air like clumsy birds. They crashed down over everything, the marble floor, the staircase, the hems of designer fabrics, and her. The Omega who tripped me. Her dress, once a pale gold, was now splashed with sticky red juice from the waist down. She let out a sound halfway between a gasp and a scream, loud enough to make half the hall whip around. "What is wrong with you?" she shrieked, backing away like I'd poured acid on her. "You ruined it. This gown is imported." "Are you serious?" I said before I could stop myself. "You tripped me." Her eyes widened, not in guilt, in outrage. "How dare you speak to me?" Before I could respond, my supervisor rushed in, already panicking. Your Majesty, she cried suddenly, voice cracking. Forgive her, she's clumsy, she'll be punished. I froze, because behind her, the crowd was parting. Both kings were walking toward us. Not striding, not making some grand royal entrance. Walking directly to where I stood dripping juice and humiliation. The Omega who'd tripped me immediately switched tones, the way nobles do when the powerful are watching. Your Majesties, she said breathlessly, bowing so low I thought she might fall. This maid has caused a terrible disruption. Perhaps she should be removed from the hall before she ruins the evening even further. But neither king looked at her. They were both looking at me. The hall was so quiet I could hear the music falter mid-note. The older twin, the one with the steadier gaze, studied the spill, the shattered goblets, the angry Omega, then finally me. His jaw tightened a fraction. The younger one tilted his head slightly. You're hurt, he said quietly. I blinked, confused. I'm fine. You fell, he said, and only then did I notice the sting in my palms. Thin red lines where the glass had cut me. My supervisor shoved herself forward, bowing so hard her voice cracked. Your Majesties, forgive her. She'll be removed at once. No, the older king said. Just one word, heavy enough that even the chandeliers seemed to sway. No, the Omega in gold echoed, incredulous. She ruined my gown. The king barely glanced at her before turning back to me. His expression was unreadable, but not unkind, just searching. We need to speak with you, he said. My heart stopped. The younger twin added, privately. A collective whisper shot through the hall like a gust of wind. Omega stared, their expressions twisting with disbelief and envy, as if a maid being summoned was some kind of scandal they'd never seen before. My supervisor looked like she might faint. And me. I couldn't breathe, because this was exactly what I'd feared when I saw the recognition in their eyes. They remembered me, after all this time, and whatever they remembered. They weren't letting it go. They didn't touch me. They didn't even stand close. They simply motioned toward the side door leading out of the hall, the one only nobles and royal staff ever used, and began walking. And I followed. Because what else could I do? Refuse the kings in front of 1,000 watching eyes. My supervisor grabbed my arm as I passed her, nails digging through the fabric of my sleeve. What did you do? She hissed. What do they know about you? I don't know, I whispered, though that wasn't entirely true. I had guesses, fears, a memory that kept clawing at the edges of my mind. But before she could demand more, the older king looked back. Let her go. My supervisor's hand snapped away from me like she'd touched fire. The moment the doors closed behind us, the muffled music and chatter of the ball fell away. The air in the corridor felt colder, heavier, like the palace itself was listening. The twins didn't speak at first. They just walked ahead of me, their identical silhouettes cutting through the dim hallway light. I could feel the questions gathering behind my ribs, but I didn't dare break the silence. We climbed a staircase I'd only ever cleaned, never used. Up into the upper court, a place maids were only allowed with permission and always supervised. It felt wrong walking there alone, even with the kings leading the way. At the top of the stairs, 2 guards opened another door, and suddenly we were inside a small council chamber, all polished stone, tall windows, and a long table that looked like it belonged to people far more important than me. The younger twin finally spoke. Sit. I obeyed. My legs didn't trust themselves to do anything else. The moment I sat down, both kings studied me with an intensity that made my throat go dry. Not hostile, not suspicious, just certain that they knew me, even if I prayed they didn't. The younger twin leaned forward, forearms resting on the table. You didn't mention your name downstairs. His tone wasn't sharp, but it wasn't gentle either. It was the tone of someone who already knew the answer and was waiting to see if I'd lie. I swallowed. I wasn't trying to hide anything. The older twin spoke then, quieter, but with a weight that made the room feel smaller. We haven't seen you since the fire. My heart dropped so fast I felt dizzy. The fire. There it was. The memory I'd been trying not to think about since the moment their eyes met mine. I clasped my hands on the table to keep them from shaking. That was years ago. 8, the younger twin corrected. 8 years since you pulled us out of that storage wing before the ceiling collapsed. My breath caught. We never forgot your face, the older one said, or the fact that you vanished before we could thank you. The room felt too quiet, too focused, like the walls were leaning in. I didn't vanish, I whispered. I left the palace because it wasn't safe anymore, for me. The younger twin's jaw tightened. Someone set that fire, someone who wanted to get rid of us. And you got caught in the middle. I looked away. I got blamed for it. You were never a suspect, the older one said. Not officially, I replied. But the nobles made it clear someone from my level had to take the fall, and I wasn't going to wait for them to decide how far they wanted to push that. For the first time since the ball, the twins exchanged a glance, a heavy, knowing one. We thought you were dead, the younger twin murmured. I shook my head. Just gone. Silence settled again, thick as wool. Then the older twin leaned forward. Why did you come back? That question hit deeper than I expected, because the truth was simple. I hadn't come back for them. I'd come back for the wages, for the shelter, for the single job the palace offered to people with no connections and nowhere else to go. But saying that felt too raw, too close to the bone, so I told them the part that mattered most. I came back because I thought no one remembered me. Both twins stared at me, sharp as lightning, still as stone. Clearly, I said quietly, I was wrong. Neither of them corrected me. Neither of them needed to, because the truth was already written across their faces. They hadn't forgotten anything. Not the fire, not the night I dragged them out of the smoke, not me. And whatever they wanted from me now, it wasn't going to stay a secret for long. For a long moment, none of us said anything. The chamber felt too still, too heavy, like even the air held its breath. I'd spent 8 years trying to bury what happened during the fire, and 8 minutes in this room had unearthed every piece of it. The younger twin broke the silence first. You didn't just save us, he said. You saved the entire royal line. If we had died that night, the kingdom would have fallen into succession chaos. I didn't know any of that, I replied. I wasn't thinking about the crown or the kingdom. I just heard the beams cracking and... You ran into a burning wing, the older one said, cutting gently across my words. No one does that without a reason. My pulse thudded. I thought someone was trapped. I thought it was a servant. Someone like me. The younger twin exhaled hard, not angry, more like someone trying to understand something that didn't quite make sense to him. You could have died, he said. I know. You didn't even tell us your name afterward. I wasn't supposed to be in that part of the palace, I said quietly. I was delivering linens for a maid who'd fallen sick. I wasn't even assigned to that wing. If the supervisors had known, if the nobles had known, I shook my head. I'd have been thrown out long before the smoke cleared. The older twin's jaw clenched. So you disappeared before they could blame you. Yes. But someone still blamed you, the younger one said, and it wasn't a question. I stared down at my hands, at the faint red marks from the broken goblets downstairs. A rumor started, that I'd been seen near the storage wing before the fire, that I'd been acting suspicious. Suspicious? The younger one snapped. Not loud, but sharp enough that the guards outside probably heard it. It was an easy story, I said hollowly. A nameless maid in the wrong place. And when I left that same night, it proved everything. The older twin leaned forward. You didn't just leave. You fled. I let out a humorless breath. When the people who control your entire life start whispering that you're dangerous, fleeing stops being dramatic. It becomes survival. They both looked away for a moment. Not out of guilt, but out of calculation, like they were replaying events they'd never fully understood until now. What happened to you after? The older twin asked. I shrugged. I worked, in kitchens, in stables, in inns, all under different supervisors. Eventually, no one recognized my face anymore, and when the palace started hiring again, the job paid better than anything I'd had in years. I figured the fire was old news, forgotten. It wasn't, the younger twin said. Something in his voice made me look up. You think we didn't search for you? He asked softer now. We owed you our lives. The older one continued. We had portraits made, descriptions circulated. We interrogated every noble who'd been near that wing. We even suspected the council. But you were gone, the younger one finished. Vanished, like you'd been erased. My breath caught. You were children, I murmured. You couldn't have known any better. We weren't children, the older one corrected gently. We were crowned princes, and we failed you. I didn't know what to say to that. I didn't know what I was supposed to say. The silence stretched again, thicker this time, almost suffocating. Finally, the younger twin stood. Someone tried to kill us that night. My stomach dropped. He continued, and we believe the person behind the fire is still inside the palace. A cold ripple went through me. And now that you've returned, the older twin added quietly, whoever started that fire may believe you know more than you do. My hands went numb. So? I whispered. What does that mean? The older twin's expression didn't change, but the tension in his voice did. It means, he said, you're in danger. The younger one nodded. And we're not letting you face that alone. I didn't move. I barely breathed, because for 8 years the fire had been a memory I ran from. But now it wasn't a memory, it was alive. It was active. And it was here. And the kings weren't the only ones who remembered what happened that night. Word travels fast in a palace. Too fast. By the time the kings dismissed me from the council chamber, half the staff had already heard some twisted version of what happened downstairs. The maid who distracted the kings, the maid who interfered with the ball, the maid who dared to speak out of turn. None of them knew the truth, but that didn't matter. Rumors don't need accuracy. Rumors just need mouths. I'd barely made it back to the service wing when 3 kitchen attendants stopped talking the moment I passed them. Another girl, someone I sometimes shared laundry duty with, refused to meet my eyes. My supervisor was waiting by the door like a storm cloud. What? She hissed. Did you say to them? Nothing, I said. They pulled me aside, that's all. That's all? She threw her hands in the air. Half the Omegas in the hall now think you were summoned for a private selection. I stared at her, horrified. That's not what happened. Doesn't matter, she snapped. Perception is reality in this palace. Before I could defend myself, someone shoved past me hard enough that I stumbled backward. It was the Omega from earlier, the one whose dress I'd spilled the juice on. She stood in the doorway with 2 friends flanking her like guards, her chin lifted high enough to make her crown of braids shake. You have some nerve, she said. Parading around like you're special. I blinked. I'm not. Save it. She looked me up and down like she was inspecting a stain. I spoke to several nobles. Word is the kings personally escorted you upstairs. A maid. That's not. You think you can steal attention from those of us who trained for this? She said, voice rising. You think you can waltz in here with your broom and your ragged uniform and take what was meant for us? I shook my head, trying to keep my voice steady. I didn't take anything. Oh, but you will, she sneered. The kings single you out once and suddenly every noble wants to know who you are. They're asking questions. And the court doesn't like questions. Her friend stepped forward, crossing her arms. People are saying you planned the spill so they'd notice you. My stomach dropped. That's ridiculous. Is it? The Omega asked softly. Because all we saw was a maid who caused a scene and was then whisked away to the royal chambers. I didn't do anything, I said firmly, but my voice cracked anyway. Doesn't matter, she said. You've embarrassed important people. You've made us look desperate. And now, she leaned in, her whisper cold against my ear. Now, you've made enemies. Something inside me tightened. I don't want trouble. Then you shouldn't have come back to this place, she said. People here never forget. And they never forgive. Before I could reply, someone shouted from down the hall, a guard. By order of the Twin Kings, he called out loudly. The maid assigned to the Great Hall is to be relocated to temporary royal supervision. Every head swung toward me, every face twisted. Confusion, suspicion, anger, envy. The Omega's lips curled. See, this is how it starts. I shook my head, backing away. I didn't ask for this. No one ever asks for the court's attention, she said. But once you have it, you're marked. The guard approached me. You'll need to come with me. My supervisor grabbed my arm. Where is she being taken? Upper court, he said. King's orders. The hallway buzzed instantly. Whispers, gasps, accusations forming before the truth even had a chance. I felt my throat close. Upper court. Again. The Omega stared at me like she was already planning the next rumor. Because in this palace, truth didn't matter. Only stories did. And I had just become the story. The guard walked ahead of me, but he didn't rush. Maybe he sensed I was on the edge of panic. Maybe he'd been ordered to handle me gently. Either way, the slow pace only made my thoughts louder. Upper court supervision. Those 3 words meant 100 different things in the palace. Protection, surveillance, scrutiny. Or sometimes, A quiet way of removing people from sight so no one noticed when they disappeared. Every step down that hallway felt like it could be my last as a free person. When we reached the marble staircase leading to the upper court, the guard paused. "They said you're not under arrest," he murmured, almost kindly. "You're just being relocated." "Why?" My voice came out thin. "I'm a maid. Why would the kings want me guarded?" He hesitated. "It's not my place to say." Which meant he knew. He just wasn't allowed to tell me. He opened the stairway door, and I followed him up into a quieter world, the world of nobles, royals, and the kinds of secrets that burned hotter than the fire 8 years ago. We stopped outside a private suite overlooking the courtyard. Before I could ask anything else, the doors opened and the younger twin stepped out. The guard bowed and left us. The king looked at me like he'd been pacing for hours. "I'm glad you came." "I didn't have a choice," I said. "No," he replied softly. "But you do have one now." He gestured inside. The room was warm, lit by lanterns, and quieter than any place I'd stood in for years. The older twin stood by a map table, his hand hovering over a section marked with red ink. It didn't take long for me to see what the markings meant. The fire. They were still investigating it, still tracking it. The younger twin closed the door behind me, but he didn't block my path. He moved to stand beside his brother. "You're not safe in the service quarters," the older twin said. "The person who started that fire is still here, someone with rank, someone who believes you might reveal what you saw." "I didn't see anything," I whispered. "That doesn't matter," the younger one said. "They think you did." I pressed my hands against my sides to stop them from shaking. "What do you want from me?" "Protection," the older twin said. "For you." "And," the younger added, "a chance to make this right." I let out a hollow laugh. "Nothing about this is right." "No," the younger twin admitted, "and that's why we're giving you a choice." He stepped closer, not imposing, not demanding, just present. "You can stay in the palace," he said, "but under our protection. That means moving to the royal wing, new duties, new quarters, a position high enough that no noble can touch you." "And if I say no?" I asked. "Then we'll send you away from here," the older twin said. "Far enough that the person who wants you gone won't find you." The younger twin added, "But it means leaving your job, your home, and possibly being hunted outside the castle walls." My stomach twisted. "So either I lose everything," I said, "or I accept a role I never asked for and hope the nobles don't destroy me for it." The twins exchanged a look, one of those silent conversations only siblings can have. "We aren't asking for loyalty," the older one said. "We're offering safety. But the choice has to be yours," the younger finished. "We won't force you." I turned toward the window. Below us, the courtyard glimmered with lanterns. I could see the last of the ball guests leaving, the 1,000 Omegas who'd arrived with hopes, dreams, ambitions, all of them stepping into carriages, unaware of the storm brewing in the palace walls. And me, a maid with no title, no power, and a past wrapped in smoke and broken ceilings. I closed my eyes. I thought about the fire, the rumors, the nobles' glares, the Omega's warning. "You've made enemies." She wasn't wrong. If I stayed where I was, every jealous noble and frightened conspirator would see me as an easy target. If I disappeared, I'd always be running, and if I accepted the king's offer, then I'd be stepping into the center of a battlefield I barely understood. But at least I wouldn't be alone. When I opened my eyes, both twins were waiting, not pressuring, just waiting. "I'll stay," I said finally, "but only if I have real work, real duties. I'm not hiding in a gilded cage." The older twin nodded once. "You will have real responsibilities. And protection," the younger added, "starting now." My heart felt too loud in my chest, because the moment I agreed, I understood something. My life as a maid was over, and whatever waited in the royal wing was going to demand more strength, more truth, and more courage than anything I'd ever known.